Cropsey. The story of Cropsey haunted Staten Island for decades. Parents warned their children to stay away from the woods near Willowbrook State School, whispering tales of a madman who lurked in the shadows, snatching kids who strayed too far. Some described him as an escaped mental patient, others as a hermit seeking revenge. But what began as a tale to scare children soon revealed a terrifying truth. The origins of the legend can be traced back to the 1970s and 80s. During this time, children started disappearing, and many pointed to the abandoned Willowbrook State School as the center of the mystery. This institution, originally designed to care for children with developmental disabilities, became infamous after journalist Geraldo Rivera exposed its horrifying conditions in 1972. The footage showed overcrowding, neglect, and abuse, a breeding ground for horror stories that would soon become all too real. Then came the disappearances. First Alice Pereira in 1972, then Holly Ann Hughes in 1981, Tia Hees Jackson in 1983, Hank Gafforio in 1984, and finally, Jennifer Schweiger in 1987. All children, all vanishing without a trace. The community was terrified, and soon, an actual suspect emerged, a man who fit the eerie description of Cropsey all too well, Andre Rand. Rand had worked as a janitor at Willowbrook before it shut down, but even after its closure, he was still seen lurking around the area, living in the woods, sometimes inside the abandoned tunnels beneath the school. He had a disturbing history of crimes involving children, including a 1969 conviction for kidnapping. When 12-year-old Jennifer Schweiger went missing, investigators zeroed in on him. After a massive search, her body was discovered buried near Willowbrook. Rand was arrested and convicted of kidnapping, though authorities believed he was responsible for far more. With little physical evidence, Rand was never charged with murder, only with the kidnappings of Jennifer Schweiger and Holly Ann Hughes. Yet, many believe he is behind all the missing children of Staten Island. His behavior, his past, and the locations where he was found all point to something much darker. But because of a lack of definitive proof, the full truth remains unknown. The legend of Cropsey has never died. Some say Rand was a scapegoat, while others believe he was part of something bigger, a hidden network of predators operating in the shadows. The 2009 documentary Cropsey explored these theories, uncovering eerie connections between folklore and real crime. The Watcher House. In 2014, a family in Westfield, New Jersey, moved into their dream home, a beautiful 6-bedroom house in an affluent neighborhood. Not long after settling in, they began receiving anonymous letters from someone who referred to themselves as the Watcher. The letters were deeply unsettling. They referenced specific details about the house, its layout, and the family members, even mentioning the children by name. Phrases like, "I am the Watcher," and have been in charge of watching the house for decades, sent chills down the spine of the new owners. Over time, the letters became more threatening, referring to the children as young blood and making ominous remarks about the family's safety. Despite investigations and efforts to identify the sender, the culprit was never found. The ordeal left the family so disturbed that they decided to sell the house at a significant financial loss. To this day, the true identity and motives of the Watcher remain a mystery. The Smiley Face Murders. The Smiley Face Killer theory revolves around the deaths of dozens of young men, often found drowned in rivers or lakes after nights out drinking. The theory gained traction when private investigators claimed that smiley face graffiti was discovered near several of the locations where the bodies were recovered. Most of the men were athletic, academically successful college students, leading some to speculate that these deaths were not accidental, but the work of a group of serial killers targeting similar victims. Authorities have generally dismissed the theory, citing a lack of concrete evidence to link the cases. However, the eerie patterns and the presence of smiley faces in multiple cases have left families and investigators wondering if something more sinister might be at play. The mystery continues to haunt those connected to these tragedies. The Janett Christman case. It was March 18, 1950, Columbia, Missouri. 13-year-old Janett Christman had taken a babysitting job for a family she knew well. The couple was going out for the evening, leaving her in charge of their 3-year-old daughter. Janett was responsible, bright, and mature for her age. Babysitting wasn't new to her. Janett arrived at the Romax home around 7:30 p.m. and settled in for what should have been an ordinary night. But sometime between 10:30 p.m. and 1:30 a.m., something terrible happened. Around 10:35 p.m., the Columbia Police Department received a panicked phone call. A young girl was screaming, pleading for help, but before the dispatcher could get any information, the line went dead. No name, no address, just raw terror, then silence. Officers couldn't trace the call. Technology wasn't advanced enough to pinpoint the origin. The Romacks returned home just after 1:30 a.m. What they walked into was every parent's nightmare. They found the front door ajar, the living room light still on, and a horrifying scene inside. Janett Christman had been brutally attacked. She was found near the living room phone, an extension cord wrapped around her neck. There were signs of a violent struggle. The house showed no signs of forced entry, suggesting she may have known or trusted her attacker. The toddler was safe, untouched, still asleep in her room. The investigation was immediate. Dozens of suspects were interviewed. One man, a friend of the family, became a prime suspect. He had made inappropriate comments about Janett in the past, but due to weak evidence and no confession, he was never formally charged. The case remained unsolved. Over the years, speculation grew. The idea of a young babysitter, alone in a house, attacked by a mysterious man in the dark, it struck a nerve. The real tragedy of Janett Christman slowly evolved into something else, a horror story whispered from parent to child, friend to friend. The fictional version added suspense, a hidden killer, phone calls from inside the house, a chilling voice. But those parts never happened. What did happen was far worse, because it was real. A young girl was murdered, and no one was ever brought to justice. To this day, Janett Christman's case remains open, unsolved. Her story became legend, but beneath the fiction is a painful truth, a crime that still haunts Columbia, Missouri, more than 70 years later. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. In February 1959, 10 experienced hikers embarked on a trek through the Ural Mountains in Russia. One of them returned due to medical reasons, but the other 9 continued their route. They had planned to update their institution, but 3 weeks after their departure, the institute grew worried. On February 20th, a search party was dispatched to find them. A couple of weeks later, the bodies of the 5 missing hikers were found. Their tent had been cut from the inside, and they had sustained severe injuries. One had a fractured skull, one had broken ribs. One was missing his eyes and tongue, while one had bitten off part of his own knuckle. After some snow melt, the rescue team found the remaining hikers. They had more inexplicable injuries. One had a fractured skull, another had a twisted neck, 2 were missing their eyes, and one, eyeless, was also missing her tongue. The injuries did not seem consistent with a typical avalanche, adding to the mystery. Some of the hikers' clothes had traces of radiation. There were many theories, including military experiments, UFOs, and even Yeti attacks, but none were conclusive. The Dyatlov incident is one of the most mysterious and chilling cases in modern history,